Hi, I'm a former higher ed CMO and I have a confession to make. I genuinely hope that Gen Alpha is our saviors. When I think about our society and what I think Gen Alpha represents and what their parents are raising them to be and to be like, I'm really, really hoping that they are the generation that changes our society for the better because goodness knows we definitely need that. In this episode, we're going to be unpacking Ology's recent study looking at the influence that Gen Alpha's parents have on them and what impact that will have on college marketing and college choice. I think there's some really important takeaways in this episode, especially when you consider that the oldest Gen Alphas are 14 and are now entering their sophomore years of high school. So they are just a few years away from joining us on campus and probably just now entering our funnels. This is going to be a really important episode with some really important takeaways for higher education marketers. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, a podcast that empowers higher ed marketers to bring innovation, creativity, and excellence to their work. I'm your host, Jamie Hunt. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the best minds in higher education marketing. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher educational professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. I am so excited to welcome Day Kibelt, who is the VP of Strategy at Ology, which is a marketing and branding agency that works in the higher education space, and the author of Mailed It, which she co-wrote with Ashley Budd, who was a guest on a previous episode. Day and I have been having some Bridgerton conversations lately. And after Mallory Wilsey outed me on her podcast as a Bridgerton addict, I feel like I have to start off by saying, how did you feel about season 3, Day?
I think but we'll share with the listeners. I think it requires more than one watch. I will say that. I think the first time you watch it, you're a little bit like disappointed, maybe. But then if you watch it again, you're like, oh, like
Right.
you get the nuance
Yeah.
of the relationship and the slow burn.
Yes. Now we've driven all the men away from the podcast.
Stay, please. That's it.
Right.
Dearest gentle listeners, please
Exactly.
stay.
Right. I promise it's worth it. Well, Day, welcome so much to the show. You are the VP of Strategy at Ology, which is a marketing and branding agency built for education. Can you tell me a little bit about your higher ed journey?
Yeah, of course. So my higher ed journey started in 2011. I had been working in marketing before that, but in a different industry. And when I moved into higher ed, I actually started my career at Penn State World Campus. So I was doing marketing for their online programs. And then I moved into admissions and did a lot of enrollment work, especially kind of enrollment communications, CRM, Comflows, all that. And then in 2016, we moved to Cornell and I did a year in annual giving, which was a completely different side of the university, which
Yeah.
I really enjoyed actually. And then after that, we moved to Canada, which is actually where I live now. And I worked at Western University in recruitment there for 4 years. And I've been at Ology for 2 years now. So if you're wondering why all those moves, Day, if you've been doing the math, I was following a PhD student.
Ah,
I was following my husband did his PhD and then a postdoc and then tenure track position, and that is why. That is why.
well, and you've covered like a wide swath of areas of institutions during your career too.
Yeah. So my actual jobs were different types of institutions in different parts. But after being at Ology for 2 years, what I love about this the most is that I get to work with big schools, small schools, rural schools, urban schools, liberal arts schools, research schools. And the great insight that you get from just being able to look across the industry and not just deep dive into a single institution is totally mind changing. And I love that. I love that purview and that privilege to be able to work with so many institutions.
That's what I'm honestly most excited about with consulting
Yes.
is just being able to help more schools, more types of
Yes.
schools, and see types of schools I haven't worked in before, which
Yeah.
I've worked at small privates, very large public research
Hmm.
universities, and a lot in between. But, there's a lot of very specialized schools out there. There's a lot of different flavors of higher ed, and it's really
Hmm.
fun to be part of that.
Yeah. I mean, and there's things that they all have in common. And then there's things that are very unique to each one. And our job, right, is to find those unique things. And it's just a great treasure hunt.
I love it.
That's our job,
I
treasure
love it.
hunt.
Well, we're here to talk about Gen Alpha, and I understand you are a mom of a Gen Alpha.
Yes, that makes me so qualified to talk about the entire generation, right? No. Yes, my son is almost 6 years old. His name is Romeo,
Aw.
and that's the right reaction, by the way. That's why we named him Romeo. Um, so studying this generation is really interesting because you get to have a bit of a personal lens too, right?
Yeah,
When you're kind of studying something that you're in yourself, it feels different.
yeah. So recently, Ology released a study on Gen Alpha parents and the role that they play
Mm,
in, or will play, I guess, in college choice. And for starters, let's like unpack who is Gen Alpha and why are
mhm,
they relevant to us right now? Because right now we have Gen Z in college,
mhm.
or starting college. So tell me a little bit more about Gen Alpha.
All right. Well, I'll start with the word alpha itself. I think a lot of people, that word has so many connotations. I think the reason it went back to alpha is the alphabet, right? So we were
Hmm.
at Z, now we're at A, it's alpha. It doesn't have anything to do with their personality or anything like that. What's really cool about this generation is that it's the largest generation and the most diverse generation ever. So for the first time, this is a generation that is actually minority white, which is really kind of interesting, right? When you think about how enriching that is for society everywhere.
Yeah.
They are, so it's defined, somebody out there decides, right? They define
Right.
when this generation is born. And right now, this generation is defined as between 2010 and 2025. So that means, 2024 right now, that the oldest of them are 14 years old. And for us as university marketers, that means a lot of them will be starting their sophomore year this September,
Wow.
like right now, right? Like
Wow.
right now.
And like a Doogie Howser might be starting college.
And so, yeah. And so, they're in our funnels. They're going to be in our funnels in a matter of weeks if they're not already. And so, this is why they're so relevant to the higher ed conversation right now.
And do they have like a sense of like what defines this generation, or is it just like they're too young to have sorted that out yet?
When we're doing this research, it's really hard to generalize generations, period, but
Yeah.
especially children, right? Like
Yeah.
they're too young to know much about them. So what you observe are the trends around them, the technology they interact with, how they interact. And of course, with this generation, we all know what the biggest thing that affected them was, right?
Yeah.
It was the pandemic and it affected all of us. But for them, it happened during crucial childhood milestone moments, right? So when you go to school and they teach you you need to share or not touch each other's bodies or you need to wear clothes and things like that, they were home. They were home. They don't know these things. So in some ways that's kind of comical.
Yeah.
That was, some of those things did affect them, but one of I think the really interesting things that folks who study generations are starting to see is that the change that has remained is the family dynamic,
Mm.
because as we all know, we were all home, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's the part we were excited to dive into more specifically, knowing how important family is in the college decision.
Yeah. What role does technology and digital media and all of that play in the households of families that have
Yeah.
Gen Alpha children?
Yeah. So I think this is one of those, I like to say, wherever we think Gen Z paved the way, Gen Alpha expects it. Like, I think
Mm.
that's my summary of it. So, we might, when we think of Gen Z, we think they're very connected and they're very kind of digitally savvy, right? They're a whole kind of, they've progressed so much since kind of, I'm a millennial, like millennials, we were born half digital, half not. And so, Gen Alpha kids, instead of just kind of living in technology and kind of using it as a tool, for them it's just a way of life at this point, right? So these children were born into households that have smart devices everywhere, right? My son was trying to talk to a Bluetooth speaker the other day. I'm like, oh, no, this is just a speaker. Like, this is not Alexa.
Right, right.
And that's, I
That
think
had to be
that's,
so cute. I'm, like,
it's
mentally picturing
it's
talking
pretty
to a
cute.
speaker.
I'm like, honey, it's not going to respond.
Aw,
It's not.
that's
I'll
so cute.
respond for you. I think that's a good example of how they see technology. It's something that's integrated into their life, and so like both generations really are constantly bombarded with information all the time. What we found in the study is that Gen Alpha kids, as expected, right, they spend at least 2 hours every single day consuming content, and most of that happens on TV or a smartphone. So, you got to think some of them are really, really young, right? They don't have
Yeah.
their own tablets yet. A lot of parents kind of hand over the phone when they need a break. So that's what we saw as kind of the majority behavior. But there's a really cool saving grace here, which is that's not the whole story. We also saw that there was a lot of very kind of active children. They love the outdoors, they love the arts, they love sports. And so, if you ask me, I think we're kind of seeing a rebalance
Mm,
of kind of being too digital to, and focused on that as like the cool new thing, back to, oh, okay, where do we adjust here? Like, if the pendulum is swinging back, I think we're kind of in the middle.
yeah. I love to see that, and I love to see so my sister has 3 Gen Alpha kids, 13, 11, and 9,
Hmm.
and she is constantly like, "Nope, this is go outside and playtime. This
Yeah.
is like, we're gonna go to sporting events
Yeah.
together, or you're gonna be in every team sport. We're gonna go to the pool." Like, it's very much not just a hand the iPad over, but I was thinking about this generation started in 2010. That's when the iPad came out. These were the babies that I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
when, like, they were first, like, you see them trying to zoom in on books, like
Yes.
physical media, because they grew up with
Yeah,
iPads.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And some of the older Gen Alphas, I think we see they are content creators. They love to create content. It's kind of this natural thing for them. Where like I have Gen Z nephews and nieces, and they don't post.
Hmm,
They don't post.
interesting.
It's cringe to post, right? So yeah, it's interesting for them. It's just another way
Yeah.
that life is. It's not an add-on. Yeah.
My 9-year-old niece a couple years ago did, like, a little kind of get ready with me
Oh,
video. It was so
cute.
cute, but her littler sister was in the background the whole time making faces, and every time the older niece would, like, be more paying attention to the screen, the other niece in the background would just look normal. It was so cute.
That is really cute.
I love it.
I also, like, get ready with me at 9 years old is like, what color scrunchies do I wear? I don't
Right,
know, right? Like, should I use my rainbow shirt or my unicorn shirt?
right.
I love it.
Like, which chapstick flavor should I
Yes.
use today? Yes, so cute. So why did Ology want to do
Mhm.
this research into Gen Alpha?
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at that earlier. I think we saw something really interesting in the family dynamic because in 2023, before we did our own study, we put together what we call a primer. And what that primer did is it pulled in a bunch of secondary sources out there from generational experts and futurists. And we just wanted to see what are some of these preliminary trends, and especially kind of in comparison to Gen Z. And that family relationship, that relationship with the parent, was something that was standing out. I think I speculate as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mm,
So we wanted to dig deeper into that, and we wanted to understand what is that relationship, and then also what are the parents of Gen Alpha thinking about, higher education, and what would be some of the lessons that we could learn, right?
mhm.
Some of the other things I think that were interesting, I think in general, is parenting dynamics sort of shift
Hmm.
generation to generation, right? So there used to be like the generation that's like, you live under my roof and you do as I say,
Yeah.
right? Which, is kind of a tail end of how I was raised. Um,
Hashtag hi mom. No.
hi, Hi, mom. My mom doesn't speak English, fortunately, so I can't be outed. And then we went into what some people, I don't love these terms at all, like what some people call like the helicopter parent, right?
Mm.
The parents that did everything for their kids. And so just like the digital pendulum is swinging, I feel like there's a swing here too, right? Like it went from you're on your own when you're 18 to I'm going to help you out with everything, and like we're back in the middle again. And so we wanted to look into what that looked like and what it means for higher ed.
I think it's so fascinating because there was like helicopter parents, and then I think we called them snowplow parents.
Yeah.
And I wonder what term we'll have for the parents of these kids once they get into college. If
You know what? Yeah, that maybe we can decide that right now, Jamie.
oh
You know?
yes, we can be the founders of the term. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
But it might. What would you call it? I mean, you've seen that. You've spent much more time with the data, I'm sure, than I have.
The partnership parent. But I mean that's the idea. I don't know that I would call it that, but I think that's the idea.
I love it. I love it. So, about according to the study, about 60% of Gen Alpha parents are millennials. And so how does that play out in their parenting?
I like to point that out, and I'm so glad that you did, because a lot of our findings are very generalized and millennial leaning in
Mhm.
that way. So usually the folks at the cusp, my exennial friends, get very offended. So I apologize to all of you. I'm sorry. When relevant, I will point things out that are different. And our study does. So that's good. But I think when I think of millennials, also being a millennial myself and like very much identifying with that label, whatever that means for people, I think millennials are, they have grown up kind of very values focused.
Mm.
I think it's a generation that really focuses on kindness and empathy. And I mean, we've had kind of a really interesting just path to adulthood, right? Where things are more expensive, things are harder, there's more debt. I think millennial parents just generally are thinking, okay, what kind of world are we leaving for our kids? Because the world we got is not the one their parents had. I think that's what, in general, I would say characterizes the millennial parents. But I want to speak about the parents of Gen Alpha a little bit more broadly so that nobody feels excluded. And I can talk about some of the three. Exactly, three key findings. Sorry, some of the three key findings that I think jumped out to me the most in this study.
I would love that.
Probably my favorite is that these parents of Gen Alpha, they appear to approach their families like democracy. So they give their children a voice and a vote in family decisions from the earliest ages. And for me, again, being a mom of an almost 6-year-old, I'm like, oh, that's what we do, right? And so it's a situation in which, you got to think about the context here. A lot of families are having fewer children. When the pandemic happened, people were home all the time. Like, of course, we're going to discuss things together, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you don't have so many kids at home, then there's no children's table for them to eat at and leave the adults alone. Like, you're all in it all the time
Yeah.
together. So there tends to be a lot of back and forth,
Mm.
and a lot of considering what their needs and wants are, but also kind of integrating that into a bigger conversation about, well, okay, well, but what does the family want? Like, we all have wants and needs. So like, what is the middle? What is the meeting point?
I wonder
So I
if
love
that
that.
I wonder if that means they'll be better at compromising with roommates and having like better conflict resolution skills and that sort of thing.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the second thing that I think really jumps out at me, and it kind of comes from maybe how these parents are themselves and the society they grew up in, is they really think and treat their children as extensions of themselves. I think most parents do this kind of in some way. Like, you kind of live through them and their successes in at least some way.
Yeah.
But these parents are really focusing on teaching their children their own values and the values that matter a lot to them. So we asked about that in the survey specifically, and the three values that rose to the top were respect and kindness and honesty. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It feels like there's this whole generation of parents racing these children to be super compassionate, self-aware, empathetic adults.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, like maybe they'll just have better relationships with roommates and understand people's needs and just have more empathy for each other in general, which would be just beautiful.
I have all my hope on the world is pinned on Gen Alpha at this point. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
they get to
Exactly.
vote in 4 years, and can they turn this all around?
Can they please? Please do. So it's funny because I found when we were doing research for this, I was also kind of doing some qualitative social listening research to see how we complement the survey data. And I found a LinkedIn post that really stood out to me. And this person who had in their LinkedIn bio that they're a fractional CMO, social media expert. So, you know, a career person in our industry, who is a mom. And she posted that when her kids were 4 and 7 years old, they started doing family meetings.
Wow.
Yeah, they're so little, right? And the initially it was centered around meal planning.
Oh,
So
cute.
everybody, I know, so cute. Everybody would sit down around the table and like discuss what they wanted to eat for the week, and then like together they'll make a meal plan and a grocery list, and then go get the food and then cook it and eat it, right? At first the kids were like, "No thanks, I don't want to play. I don't want to do this." But then, like, after kind of keeping at it for a bit, like, they would come prepared with requests and recipes and, like,
Mhm.
ideas because, again, we're teaching each other to listen and not just listen, but also be self aware, right? Of what I want and what I need and how that plays a role in the greater context of who I live with and the society I'm in. After a year, the meetings have evolved into like bigger family meetings with bigger topics, right? And now they have an agenda and the kids know how to advocate for themselves and their needs, but they also know how to listen. And the mom ends this post with something like, I hope I'm raising people who are just going to be great adults, right? And contribute to society. And I'm like, you are,
Right?
mama. And I
Those
think
kids
that's,
sound better than most adults I know, to be honest with you.
yeah. But I think this is a real life example, I think, of what we're seeing with this dynamic of really teaching your kids to be self-aware but also empathetic, that I think is going to really characterize that generation, but also the relationship they have with their parents.
That's amazing.
The third thing that really jumped out at me, and we've talked about this a little bit, is the effect of the pandemic. And so I like to think about this kind of through a scenario. You know, if you think about April 2020, right? All the schools went online. And you have these tiny little kids sitting at the kitchen table with a tablet or a Chromebook or something, and they're logged into a Zoom course. And it's maybe math, right? Like their school math. And the teacher's teaching them about triangles or something. Who knows? And the kid like didn't understand, didn't hear, who knows? And instead of raising their virtual hand and interrupting the whole class, they look up and they're like, Mom, Dad, whoever, what does isosceles mean again? And so the parent is sitting across from them at this table, probably also on their laptop, probably also trying to work. There's probably siblings, if there are siblings in the home next to them too. And I think that is a perfect characterization of what this dynamic actually is between them,
Mm.
because parents are not just parents to this generation. Parents are teachers, tutors, mentors, friends, coaches. And that happened in the pandemic. And I think that has held. Parents are their allies, their advocates, their cheerleaders, like their trusted guides. And one of my favorite findings in the survey is we asked parents, of course, so take that with a grain of salt, where their 12 to 14-year-olds go to get information first. Like, what's the
Mhm.
first source if they have a question? And I think we would all guess TikTok or
Mhm.
YouTube,
Mhm.
but it was 89% of the parents say their kids go to them first.
That's amazing. That would have
Them
never
first.
been what I would have said.
No, it's not, right? And it's like, well, okay, like we're self-important, right? Of course I'm going to say my kid comes to me first. And a lot of these kids are very little, right? So we picked out the 12 to 14-year-old answer just because they already have access to
Right.
other channels. And what I think is, even with the bias of us feeling self important as parents, that TikTok and YouTube is at like 49% in
Wow.
comparison. And so I'm like, there's something here. There's something here that's so cool and so important, and makes what parents know and what parents think and how they'll answer those questions supremely important.
Hey there, it's Mallory, Chief Strategist of Enrollify. Higher ed is facing a leadership crisis. The demands on today's college and university leaders are skyrocketing, and talent is leaving the industry at an unprecedented rate. New leaders like you are emerging, but no one is getting the proper training to be successful. Well, Enrollify is here to change that. Our new course, Lessons in Leadership, taught by Dr. Carrie Phillips, will prepare you to be a confident, empathetic, and effective leader. From systems thinking to adaptive leadership, building culture to handling difficult decisions, this comprehensive online course is perfect for new and aspiring leaders. Don't wait. The course starts September 9th, and for a lucky group of 26 students, we have the option to add interactive sessions with Dr. Phillips for personalized guidance. Visit enrollify.org to learn more.
Well, that I mean, truly, if it's even if it's, half of the 89%, that's still
Yeah.
a huge, huge, huge percent. And if they're living in households where there's this sort of democratic approach and the family meetings, I could see those family meetings extending into how we're making a choice about which colleges to visit, which colleges to
Mhm.
apply for, that kind of thing. And so that makes me wonder,
Mhm.
we have seen this like declining perception of the value of higher education over the past, 10 years or so. What are Gen Alpha's parents thinking about the value of higher ed? And is it based in their experience with
Mhm.
higher education?
Yeah, so obviously this is the question, right? Like, if their opinion is so important, what are they
What is
thinking
their
about
opinion?
us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, it's good news. Honestly, the study was just so revealing in so many ways. 70% of parents say that there's a strong value in college education today.
Oh, that's
And
great.
that is even higher for parents from historically marginalized communities. So, if the listeners are wondering, I wonder who they surveyed. I mean, we had really incredible representation all over the US, all in all different types of suburban, urban, rural communities, all different types of educational levels, socioeconomic levels, race, ethnicity representation. So these big 70% numbers like really do represent just the average American parent today, right? And so I think that's fascinating because, where's that negative narrative coming from? It's
Yeah.
not the parents of our future students. And that's a huge opportunity for us,
Yeah.
right? Digging deeper into that, what we saw is that the parents think 83% of them that have a degree think they benefited greatly from receiving that degree themselves. That's huge, 83%. And then 75% of them think that their kids would benefit greatly from college. But then we see that kind of agency, that democracy coming back into it, because only 59% of them think it's necessary, and 74% of them will let their kid ultimately decide. So they think it's important. If they have a degree, they know it was valuable for them. They don't know if that it's as necessary for their kids, and they'll ultimately let them decide.
That's really important information for higher
Yeah.
ed marketers. It's encouraging information.
Yes.
But it's also really, really important. And it just really, when I think about the Gen Alpha parents that I know, I feel like this tracks exactly with that. It's like, yes, I thought it was beneficial for me, but I'm going to let my
Mhm.
kids choose for themselves. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so anecdotally, I see evidence for the data that's in this study, and I think,
Mhm.
if you take have one takeaway from this, I think understanding that the parents are guiders, but they're going to let their kids decide. I think
Yeah.
that's really, really important to have.
Yeah, and our job as university marketers or enrollment communicators is, what do we need to give the parents so when those
Right.
conversations begin to happen, they are ready. They are
Yeah.
ready with the right questions for their kids to make that decision for themselves.
Do you notice a difference in the perspective on higher education and its value or affordability
Mhm.
or necessity based on what the educational background was of the parents that you surveyed?
Yeah. So affordability obviously is the top kind of question, information wanted category, right? It's the most important factor parents consider. It came out even in our survey. But what was really surprising is we kind of divided that answer into socioeconomic kind of level, household socioeconomic level. And 92% of high income parents consider college affordable. That's not surprising, but it's astounding to me. So there's, high income families are probably not even thinking about cost.
Yeah.
But when you look at middle income to low income, that drops drastically to like 37% and 24% respectively. So that's not a lot, right? So if you're a
No.
middle income family or a low income family, they're not thinking college is affordable at all. And, I know I work with a lot of schools who have like exceptional financial aid policies that are need based for low income families. But I worry a ton about the middle income families. 37% of them think it's affordable, and the rest are kind of like, what are we going to do? Right.
Yeah.
Because they might not qualify for the amount of need based aid that they need. And they're not going to be able to pay for it themselves either. So I really think about the middle income families out there.
They're kind of a donut hole, right? Like there's the aid exists for the lower income families and the family resources exist for the upper income families, but they're in this donut hole of how are we going to pay for college?
Yes. And, you might logically think of merit. That's great. But a lot of the need based schools don't offer merit.
Right.
And so you're kind of what I've been noticing lately is that these really amazing institutions that are need based, there's a whole slew of people in the middle of the socioeconomic brackets that it's just not accessible to them
Yeah.
because they can't rely on their merit to earn the help they need to pay for it.
I wonder what this means for private schools in particular. Will we
Hmm.
see more of the middle income families gravitating towards the state schools, the public universities, starting
Right.
at community colleges? And will some of the more expensive, but not necessarily elite privates, because I think some of the elite privates, like the name brand, it's going to draw those, it's going to draw the upper income, that sort of thing. But some of the more expensive, less elite schools, private schools with big sticker prices, are they going to be able to get those middle income
Yeah.
students in their pipeline?
Yeah. I mean, most likely my guess is that these families are saying this is not for me before they even start, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
We also asked if the parents had already started a college savings account for their
Hmm.
kids. And we looked at that answer based on the own parents' level of education. So whether they had a degree or not, and if it was associate, bachelor's, or advanced. And that I think is super concerning. What we found is that if the parents themselves don't have a degree, they have not started saving for college. They
Oh, wow.
probably don't know that they need to, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the schools that I've been working with lately are so focused on first generation students, right? But these are the students of the parents who are not starting savings accounts. And so what does that mean for first generation student recruitment, right? Uh, it means we need to get to these parents earlier, way earlier, and start educating them about how the finances of college actually works.
You just kind of blew my mind thinking about how there's like this whole group that's just not going to be financially prepared for college. And if they fall into that middle income bracket, like we were just talking about, where there isn't need based aid, what are they going to do? And that's the group that will unfortunately have to take out heavy loans.
And that's probably the majority too when you think about, the spread of income in
Yeah,
society.
right. So did your study look at all what percentage of Gen Alpha parents have a college degree or higher, like a bachelor's
Yeah.
degree or higher?
Yeah, we looked, and 30% of the parents don't have a degree at all, like not even some credit. 17% of them started college but didn't actually get a degree. So that's 47% of parents of Gen Alpha don't have any college credit or anything at all. So think about the magnitude of that in the
Yeah.
context of this affordability conversation.
And when you say that, so that's like 47% of Gen Alpha parents are really not saving for
Hmm.
college for their kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if they happen to land in middle income, which maybe they are because maybe they're successful entrepreneurs or,
Right.
where are they going to go?
Right.
What's out there for them?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's definitely something I think as marketers, as we look deeper and deeper into the funnel and look earlier and earlier at the student's experience, as we were mentioning, this first group is going to be in our funnel probably for the first time this year. Thinking about how we message around paying for college and college affordability, but then trying to work with your admissions office or your financial aid office or something to figure out how you can get that message out to middle schoolers, parents of middle schoolers, parents of elementary school kids, so that they're thinking about that early enough to have an impact on their ability to pay for college.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
So, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, parents are still the primary influence over like Google, TikTok,
Hmm.
YouTube. How important is that? I mean, at the end of the day, this study is about the influence of parents or the role
Yeah.
that parents are playing in choice, in college choice.
Yeah.
What does this mean?
Well, I think this is the most important finding of this whole study is that if parents are the most important influencer, that we as institutions need to start treating them as a primary audience, right? So every time that I work with a client and we're building communications, parents are always treated as a secondary audience. And what that means is, they get communications that are tangentially related to what their students are getting, or just a kind of resummary or rewrite of what the students are getting. But when you think about the parent role in their child's journey to college, there's a lot of things they need to do themselves that have nothing to do with what their children need to do. So I also often think about myself, right? I have a 6-year-old and we're already thinking, should he start to play an instrument?
Mhm.
Should he become an athlete that could potentially, compete at the national level? Do we do technology at home? Like, do we teach him supplemental mathematics? Like, what do we do, right, to prepare him for the best shot he can get?
Yeah.
And nobody's giving parents this information. Nobody is. And when they get older, right? So you are facing a decision of whether you should go into private school or public school. And no matter where you are, you're facing a decision about AP courses or not, or how many AP courses, or how many extracurriculars. And nobody is giving parents this information when they need to make the decision on behalf of their very young child, right? And so if I had to pick like what argument for this whole thing and thinking about parents as influencers is that if we took the time to think about them as a primary audience and train them to the level that we maybe train our admission counselors, maybe not that at that level, but give them some of that information that they need to make decisions in their lives, and we coach them with the right questions to ask their children about what majors to study or what kind of environment they want to live in, they're going to do that because their kids are going to go to them at the dinner table when they are 13, 14, and ask these questions, and we want them to be prepared.
Right.
The schools that are going to win with Gen Alpha are the ones that figure that out and prepare the parents before the kid even begins to ask the question.
I love this idea of parents not as a secondary audience. I'm working with a client right now
Hmm.
on a Conflow to get students
Hmm.
from admission all the way through to like basically their whole first year so
Yeah.
that they retain. We're
Yeah.
working to try to improve retention, persistence, and retention. And part of my proposal, which they accepted, was we need to build as robust a Conflow for parents.
Yes.
And when you think about it, like we're talking about Gen Alpha right now, right?
Hmm.
And they're, sophomores in high schools. But that doesn't, it's not like there's a switch that's flipped. Like Gen
Hmm.
Alpha's parents are magically entirely different from Gen Z's parents, right? Like
Yeah.
the Gen Z parents are the parents of the Gen Zers that are coming into our campuses this year, next year, the year after that. They're going to be very similar, I think, to the Gen Alpha parents. And this is, I mean, if we're going to make a change now, this is, I think, the time to do it.
I think it's the time. I agree.
And I think about the number of schools that I have been at and or talked to where I ask about parent communication and it's like, well, we try to collect their email addresses. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Or, oh, we'll send out, if it's really, really important, we'll send it as a postcard to their permanent address so that the parent maybe sees it.
Mhm.
But if the parents are really as involved and as influential, like that's not going to cut it.
No. Like, think about how much we spend, and rightfully, we spend on some of the other channels that we use, social, web, advertising, etc. That's phenomenal. Don't stop. But if these children are going to go to their parents first,
Mhm.
what are we doing to equip them?
Mhm.
And so I'm working with a client right now where we pitched ditch the postcard. Let's make a household guide.
I love that.
And, part of it is just educating parents about higher ed, period. And
Right.
then you can answer those questions through the lens of what you offer at your institution.
Yeah.
But we have an opportunity right now to use that really incredible partnership relationship to make the parents our allies, our
Yeah.
recruiters on the ground, and equip them with the right information and the right questions and the right answers for their kids.
This is really a good time for content marketing.
Yeah.
um, to like offer the resources for the parents of even the parents of 6-year-olds like you who are thinking about how do I best prep my kid for college and having content out there that answers some of those questions and helps them to make educated decisions about what they want their child to be involved in. There's just so much opportunity here. I remember 15 years ago, like that's mind blowing. But 15 years ago, I worked with an admissions VP who was doing like these parent guides for um like content marketing parent guides. Like he was really keyed up on them and he was really ahead of the curve, I think. I
Oh my
think,
gosh. Yeah.
I think he was thinking like helicopter parents and all of that. But like that was really, really smart. I was
Yeah.
really, really smart.
Yeah. And, I think the key is that, hey, everybody, what if the parents were a primary audience? What would that make your marketing mix look like?
Yeah. Fascinating.
Hmm.
So, looking forward, how do you see the role of parents evolving as Gen Alpha grows older and closer to making their own decisions about higher ed? Because as you
Hmm.
said, 74% of them are going to let their kid make the final
Hmm.
call. So, how do you see that evolution
Yeah.
happening?
I think the parents are going to continue to stand by their children as a resource when they're needed and provide input when they're asked, maybe sometimes when they're not asked, or coaching when it matters, right? Like, I think this dynamic of having conversations about decisions are going to continue, but I don't think they're going to force their opinions on their kids. And what I think is really important to highlight here is that the goal of these parents is to raise their children with self-awareness and agency. I think the end game, and maybe I'm speaking just from personal experience, but I think the end game is to help them become independent, empathetic adults. And so I think maybe parents will naturally kind of pull away a little bit, but the children will continue to seek them
Mm,
as kind of a trusted, reliable source. That's
yeah.
what I would predict. And when I've talked about this study at a few with a few institutions, one of the questions that always comes up is from student affairs.
Uh-huh.
Our friends at student affairs are scared, right? That there's is going to be this whole generation of new students that are going to be so kind of tied to their family that they're going to need levels of support that are kind of really extreme on college campuses, right? But I think that is missing the point a little bit. I think that what we're going to see actually are young adults who know how to recognize their needs and know when to ask for help and have conversations about what they need, because what they're being taught is that it's a self-awareness and it's that agency and it's the gather what you need. It's not a codependency with their parents, it's a partnership.
Mm. I genuinely am listening to this and thinking I wish I was Gen Alpha. Like I mean,
Right?
it kind of sounds like they're going to be coming out of high school or whatever, sort of where maybe my generation, Gen X, was in our early 30s, where it's like,
Mhm.
we have finally figured out how to advocate for ourselves. We finally
Mhm.
figured out how to be
Mhm.
self-aware, how to, moderate emotions, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
After growing up in households that where it's like, because I said so was the answer.
Yes,
There
that's
was no
right.
self-advocacy. We were drinking from lead-lined hoses. Like
Yeah,
it
there's
was
none of that.
no,
Well,
yeah.
and I think that goes back to what I said earlier, and I'm so grateful to Gen Z in general. I think they paved the way for
Mm,
this, and they the Gen Z has done just an incredible job as a generation advocating for self care and
yeah.
wellness, and Gen Alpha now expects it, right? And I actually presented the results of the study internally at an ology all company meeting, and somebody put in the chat, "Oh, that's what it's like to grow up with support." I'm like, "Oh, I wanted to hug them."
Yeah.
And obviously, it's a generalization. Like, not all family
Right.
dynamics will be the same. And there's still going to be situations that are less than ideal for a lot of children out there. But, with any kind of trend conversation like this, we're trying to pick out the things that stand out that a lot of students are going to experience, or a lot of children are going to experience, that's different than previous generations. And the trends that we're seeing, I think, are really positive and encouraging.
Well, again, all my hopes are pinned on them because
Yes.
we need empathetic people. We need, and I'm thinking, like, I define empathy as the ability to see something from somebody else's perspective.
Hmm.
A lot of people think empathy just means kindness, and I
Hmm.
think that the it's a lot more nuanced than that.
Hmm.
And it can be when you're working with someone or talking to someone or educating someone who can't see from a perspective other than themselves, that's a lot more challenging. But I think as marketers, thinking about how that ability to be empathetic can inform how we market, it's a shift. I mean, it
Hmm.
really is a shift away from an individualistic, what's in it for you, to a more collective, what's in it for making our world better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating. So, any closing thoughts about this study?
Well, I would say if listeners are interested to go read it.
Good
And
call.
I would love if people read it and reach out with questions and thoughts. And, this is a starter of a conversation that's going to go on for a few years still. So, Jamie, if you don't mind linking it in the show
Of
notes, the
course.
link could be there. But if folks want to find it, it's going to be at ology.com//gen-alpha-parents.
I love it, and definitely read it. I've looked at it a couple of times to prepare for this episode, and I'm struck by statistics in it. Every time, like a different statistic or a different takeaway jumps out at me. So this is really good stuff, really helpful stuff, and I really appreciate that Ology tackled this. So thank you for that. Dave, where can people find you?
Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so folks can find me there, and folks can find the study and other cool stuff about ology at ology.com.
And you have a book coming out.
Yes, I do.
Tell us a little about it.
My book is called Mailed It. It's a book about email marketing that I wrote with my co-author Ashley Budd, which I know is on your show,
Yes.
about email. And Ashley and I have been working together on email and email related topics for 6-7 years at this point. And what we realized is what we were both teaching was very complementary.
Mm,
So we decided, hey, like, if we put what you do and what I do in a book, it would be a really good book. So we've put this together. It's coming out on August 20th. And it's going to teach folks in nonprofit and education sectors really how to build relationships through email, and then also how to get results and emails that actually get people to do what you want them to do.
I'm so excited for you guys. Like, it's first of all, Mailed It is such a catchy, clever cover. I love that. Or title. I just absolutely love that. But I think there's this ongoing debate that I don't understand about email being
Oh
dead.
my gosh.
I,
I know.
it's infuriating.
It is infuriating. I cringe every time. I'm just like, read any study. Any
Right.
study says email is the channel that's winning the marketing mix. Even this Gen Alpha parent study, email
Yeah.
is winning at the marketing mix. That's how parents want to be contacted, right? And so it's not dead. And what I like to say is, if people are not reading your emails, it's your fault.
Yeah. 100% agree. And I'm really excited about the book, and I'll be one of the first people in line to buy my copy because I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Thank you,
Um,
Jamie.
Listeners, as always, you know where to find me. I'm on LinkedIn at Jamie Hunt. Jaime is how my parents cursed me with the spelling of my name. You can also find me on X at Jamie Hunt IMC, JaimieHuntIMC, and on Instagram and TikTok at The Higher Ed CMO. So you can always find me in those places. And as always, guys, let's go bust some silos. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry best as your hosts. Learn from Mallory Wilsey, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Eddie Francis, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.